Deep in the shadows of New Jersey's Pine Barrens, the tale of Mother Leeds was whispered through generations, each retelling more sinister than the last. Deborah Leeds, a desperate and impoverished woman, already burdened with 12 children, found herself pregnant yet again. Her family was on the brink of starvation, and the thought of another mouth to feed sent her into a fit of rage. One fateful night, during a terrible storm, she uttered words that would curse her family forever. "Let this one be a devil," she spat, her voice dripping with anger and resentment. What began as an outburst of frustration soon turned into something much darker. The villagers, deeply superstitious, believed that the Leeds family had always been marked by misfortune, but no one suspected the power behind her curse. Whispers circulated about an ancient pact made generations ago between the Leeds family and dark, unknowable forces lurking in the Barrens. Strange occurrences began to plague the village. Animals behaved erratically, crops withered for no reason, and an eerie stillness settled over the woods. It was as if the curse had already taken root, and something terrible was waiting to be born. As Mother Leeds' due date approached, the air itself seemed to hum with tension, the calm before the storm. The storm struck the night Deborah Leeds went into labor, battering the small house with torrential rain and howling winds. The midwives, pale and tense, worked swiftly to bring the child into the world, their faces twisted with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Everyone in the room could feel it. This was no ordinary birth. As lightning cracked through the sky, illuminating the darkened room, Deborah screamed one final time. But when the child arrived, silence fell, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. The baby lay still for a moment, its form cloaked in shadow. Then, with a sudden, piercing screech, the creature unfurled grotesque, bat-like wings, its eyes glowing red in the dim light. The midwives stumbled back in horror as the child's form twisted and elongated, its face warping into something monstrous, part human, part animal, part demon. In a frenzy, it lashed out at its mother and the midwives, sharp claws tearing through skin and fabric alike. Before anyone could react, it climbed the walls of the house with unnatural speed, escaping through the chimney and disappearing into the stormy night. In the aftermath, the house was left in ruins, the floor stained with blood, and the air thick with fear. The Jersey Devil had been born, and with it, a curse unlike any the village had ever known. From that moment on, the Pine Barrens would never be the same. The night the Jersey Devil escaped into the storm marked the beginning of an era of fear that would haunt the Pine Barrens for centuries. The following morning, the village was greeted by a horrifying sight. Large, cloven hoofprints, far too big to belong to any known animal, were found in the muddy ground surrounding the Leeds home. These prints led deep into the Barrens before disappearing altogether. Terrified villagers gathered, whispering about the dark curse that had brought this creature into the world. Not long after the birth, reports of strange occurrences began to flood in. Livestock were found slaughtered in brutal and inexplicable ways. Animals torn apart, their bodies left in grotesque positions, as though the killer wanted to send a message. Worse still, those brave enough to venture near the Barrens at night claimed they heard unnatural wails echoing from the trees, a chilling reminder that something terrible now lurked within the forest. The once peaceful village was now gripped by fear, as the Jersey Devil made its presence known. Farmers kept their children indoors, and hunters refused to go near the woods after dusk. People spoke of a shadowy figure with glowing red eyes stalking the edges of their land, always just out of sight but never far away. Though some skeptics tried to dismiss the sightings as overactive imaginations, the blood-soaked evidence of slaughtered animals was impossible to ignore. The Jersey Devil had arrived, and it seemed to thrive on the terror it left in its wake. It was Thomas West, a farmer known for his practicality and skepticism, who first claimed to have laid eyes on the creature. One evening, while returning from a nearby town, West noticed something perched atop a fence post near his property. At first, he thought it was an oversized owl silhouetted against the twilight sky. But as he drew closer, a wave of unease settled over him. The figure on the post was no bird. It was far too large, with wings folded tightly against its body and glowing red eyes that stared unblinkingly in his direction. West stopped dead in his tracks, the air around him suddenly feeling thick and oppressive. He called out, hoping to startle the creature away. Instead, it turned its head in a sharp, unnatural motion, revealing a twisted, reptilian face, something half human, half beast. A piercing screech shattered the stillness of the night, sending chills down West's spine. Paralyzed with fear, he could only watch as the Jersey Devil spread its wings and launched into the air with a powerful, almost effortless movement. The creature disappeared into the gathering darkness, leaving behind only claw marks on the fence post and a deep sense of dread in West's heart. His account spread quickly through the village, but few could bring themselves to believe his tale. Yet as more sightings followed, the skepticism waned. The Jersey Devil was real, and it was only just beginning its reign of terror. As the years passed, the legend of the Jersey Devil grew, fueled by stories of encounters that defied explanation. Some spoke of a shadowy figure lurking at the edge of the Barrens, always watching but never fully revealing itself. Others reported seeing strange, twisted creatures darting between the trees in the dead of night, their red eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. Each sighting added to the myth, building the Jersey Devil into a symbol of fear for the people who lived near the Pine Barrens. Farmers would wake to find their livestock slaughtered, their bodies arranged in grotesque patterns that no human could have done. Families told stories of strange noises outside their homes at night, scratching at the walls, heavy breathing just beyond the windows, and eerie wails that sent shivers down the spine. No matter how many hunters or search parties ventured into the woods, the Jersey Devil was never found, and the encounters continued. It became a part of everyday life, a shadow that hung over the region, a fear that could not be shaken. Children were warned not to wander into the woods, and even the bravest men refused to go out after dark. Some claimed the devil had the power to shapeshift, appearing as a man during the day, only to revert to its monstrous form under the cover of night. But no matter the theory, one thing was clear. The Jersey Devil was real, and it was never far from those who lived near the Barrens. In the winter of 1859, the Pine Barrens experienced one of the most chilling encounters with the Jersey Devil. A massive snowstorm had blanketed the region, turning the vast forest into a white, silent landscape. The following morning, as villagers began digging out from the storm, they discovered something that filled them with dread. Deep, cloven hoofprints appeared in the snow, impossibly large and spaced far apart, as if the creature that left them was moving at an inhuman speed. The tracks started at one farmhouse and wound their way through several other properties, cutting across fields and into the woods. What terrified the villagers most was that the tracks didn't belong to any animal they knew. They were too large, too deliberate, and when they ended at the edge of the forest, they didn't simply fade. They stopped as if the creature had taken flight. The sight of those tracks confirmed what many had feared. The Jersey Devil was still among them, more real and more dangerous than ever before. Search parties were formed, but no one dared go too deep into the Barrens. The forest, blanketed in snow, was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of branches in the wind. The devil had made its presence known once more, leaving only fear and unanswered questions in its wake. As the legend of the Jersey Devil spread beyond the Pine Barrens, it began to attract the attention of both believers and skeptics. Monster hunters from across the country arrived, eager to prove the creature's existence and claim fame. Armed with rifles, traps, and all manner of hunting equipment, they ventured deep into the Barrens, determined to track down the elusive beast. Yet no matter how prepared they were, the devil remained one step ahead. For every hunter that entered the forest, stories would return of strange sightings, eerie sounds, and unshakable feelings of dread. But the creature itself was never caught. Many hunters returned empty-handed, while some were never seen again, swallowed whole by the Barrens' thick, twisted trees. Skeptics, too, began to investigate, convinced the devil was nothing more than a figment of collective imagination, a folk tale blown out of proportion by fear. They dismissed the sightings as the product of isolation and superstition, claiming that the creature people saw was likely a misidentified animal or simply a hoax. But the more the skeptics investigated, the more they too began to question what they knew. Strange evidence like feathers larger than any bird known to man and claw marks on trees far too high to belong to any ordinary creature left even the most hardened doubters rattled. The Pine Barrens had a way of playing tricks on the mind, and those who entered often left with more questions than answers. In 1909, the Jersey Devil once again emerged from the shadows, this time with a string of sightings that spanned across multiple towns, sending the entire region into a state of panic. Over a single week, dozens of people reported encounters with the creature. A trolley full of passengers claimed to see it hovering over the tracks, while others swore they saw it perched on rooftops, staring down at them with its glowing red eyes. It was as if the devil had grown bolder, no longer content to hide in the forest. Newspapers ran sensational headlines, calling it the Week of Terror, as sightings continued to flood in. The police, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of reports, were powerless to stop the spread of fear. Panic gripped the towns, with many locking themselves inside their homes at night, refusing to go out even in the daylight. Skeptics scrambled to explain away the sightings, suggesting mass hysteria or the work of pranksters. But the evidence was too widespread, the terror too real. In one particularly chilling incident, a group of men armed with rifles cornered what they believed to be the Jersey Devil in an old barn. They fired shot after shot, but when the smoke cleared, the creature was gone, leaving only deep claw marks in the wooden beams as evidence of its presence. What the men faced that night left them shaken, their belief in the impossible now unshakable. The Jersey Devil had proven that it was more than just a myth. It was a living nightmare, defying explanation, and terrifying all who dared to face it. In the decades following the 1909 terror, the Pine Barrens fell into an uneasy quiet. The Jersey Devil seemed to vanish, its sightings growing rarer and less frequent, but the fear never left. Locals continued to feel its presence lurking in the shadows, and travelers passing through the Barrens spoke of strange rustlings in the trees, unnatural noises that stirred primal fears. But the true terror returned one autumn night in 1951, when a young couple, eager for adventure, decided to explore the heart of the Barrens. Frank and Alice Tremont had heard the stories, but like many, they believed the Jersey Devil to be nothing more than a myth. Armed with flashlights and bravado, they ventured into the woods after dark. As they walked deeper, the air grew colder, and the once comforting sounds of nature fell silent. All around them, the oppressive weight of the forest pressed in. Then, without warning, a blood-curdling screech pierced the night air. The sound was inhuman, both guttural and high-pitched, echoing through the trees and sending shivers down their spines. Panic set in as they spun around, their flashlights flickering wildly in the dark. In the distance, just beyond the reach of their lights, they saw it. A hulking, shadowy figure, with wings folded tight against its back, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. Frozen in terror, they watched as the Jersey Devil began to move toward them, its movements slow and deliberate. Without thinking, Frank grabbed Alice's hand and they ran, the creature's shrieks chasing them back to the edge of the woods. They escaped, but the memory of that night haunted them for the rest of their lives. After the Tremonts' encounter, stories of the Jersey Devil began to surface once more, though they were often brushed aside by outsiders as nothing more than folklore. However, those who lived near the Barrens knew better. Over the years, hikers, campers, and even passing motorists reported strange occurrences. Twisted trees with claw marks too high to be from any known animal, livestock disappearing without a trace, and, most chillingly, the unshakable feeling of being watched. In 1976, a group of campers found themselves at the center of one of the most terrifying encounters in recent history. They had set up camp near one of the many trails that wound through the Barrens, eager to spend a weekend hiking and exploring. On the second night, as they sat around the campfire, they heard it, the familiar screech that had haunted the Barrens for centuries. At first, they thought it was an animal, but as the sound grew closer, their unease turned to fear. Something massive moved through the trees, just beyond the firelight. Its red eyes flickered in the darkness, watching, waiting. The campers fled, abandoning their gear and running blindly through the woods. By morning, they found themselves miles from their campsite, exhausted and terrified. When they returned to gather their belongings, they found their tents shredded and deep claw marks gouged into the surrounding trees. No animal could have done this, and the campers knew it. The Jersey Devil had returned, reminding them, and the world, that some nightmares never truly die. As the stories of the Jersey Devil continued to spread, a new generation of researchers and paranormal investigators began to dig deeper into the legend, searching for the truth behind the creature. Many believed that the curse laid upon the Leeds family had far-reaching consequences, that it wasn't just the birth of a monster, but a chain of events set in motion by forces beyond human understanding. The legend of Mother Leeds had always been at the heart of the story, but what if her curse had summoned something even darker? A team of investigators, led by historian Dr. Emily Harker, ventured into the Pine Barrens in 2001, determined to uncover the truth. They spent months combing through old records, poring over every detail of the Leeds family history. What they found sent shockwaves through the local community. According to ancient texts, long before Mother Leeds' fateful curse, her ancestors had been involved in dark rituals, summoning spirits and making pacts with entities from beyond. These rituals were believed to have bound their bloodline to something far darker than anyone had realized. Dr. Harker's team uncovered evidence that the Jersey Devil wasn't merely a cursed child, but a manifestation of the darkness that had been summoned generations ago. The creature was a physical embodiment of the evil that had been brought into the world through the Leeds bloodline. This revelation changed everything. The curse wasn't just on Mother Leeds, it was on the entire region. The Jersey Devil was the consequence of a centuries-old pact that could never be undone. With this new understanding of the Jersey Devil's origins, the question arose, could the creature ever be defeated? Dr. Harker's research suggested that as long as the curse remained, the devil would continue to haunt the Pine Barrens, feeding off the fear it instilled in those who crossed its path. But there was a glimmer of hope buried in the ancient texts. According to legend, the only way to break the curse was to destroy the object used in the original ritual, a talisman said to be hidden somewhere deep within the Barrens. Driven by this knowledge, Dr. Harker and her team mounted an expedition into the heart of the forest, determined to find the talisman and put an end to the Jersey Devil once and for all. For weeks they searched, battling both the harsh terrain and the oppressive fear that seemed to radiate from the very ground. But just as they were close to giving up, they found it, a small weathered box buried beneath an ancient tree, its surface covered in strange symbols. But as they unearthed the talisman, the Jersey Devil appeared, its screech echoing through the trees. The final confrontation was upon them. With trembling hands, Dr. Harker destroyed the talisman, and as the pieces shattered, the devil let out one final blood-curdling cry before vanishing into the night. The curse had been lifted, but at what cost? Though the Jersey Devil was gone, the Barrens remained a place of darkness, a reminder of the power that once ruled there. And some say, on quiet nights, you can still hear the faint echo of wings beating in the distance. Are you craving more spine-chilling tales? Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to never miss a new story. Join us for more terrifying journeys into the unknown, where suspense and horror lurk around every corner. And don't forget to share your thoughts and suggestions for our next video in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned if you dare.